Hi everyone, Gundam here for our 48th and brand new episode of our special edition Lore of the Universal Century. Today we're going to the Griff's War era in an attempt to answer a particular question, which is... Yep, in this video we are going to explore all the variants of the Irish class space battleship, how much they differ from the regular model, when did they appeared, and extract every bit of mechanical knowledge we have on them so far. But let's start by the beginning. What is exactly the Irish class? A mass production space battleship developed by Areion Electronics for the Anti-Earth Union group, the Irish was an innovative line of ships, serving as the spearhead of the rebel organization's fleet during the Griff's War. Manufactured by Anaheim in the massive shipyards of Amman City located on the moon, the Irish class was a clear philosophical departure from previous military vessels, being not only one of the first battleships designed by a mega corporation, but also one of the only ship lines to have been kickstarted through private funding from major AUK sponsors, a first in a world where war-capable navies were usually created, enhanced and maintained solely by major political regimes, mainly the Earth Federation and the Principality of Zion. Now, this early origin as a corporate-funded design did not mean that the Irish was a standalone ship with no place in previous development lines, with the Irish being designed and conceptualized around two other spaceships, both serving as its forebears in different ways. Indeed, the Irish was actually firstly inspired by the Argama-class assault carrier, Areion Electronics' only other military vessel at that point, with the Irish class being designed as a sort of lower-cost and mass-production version of the extremely costly and fancy Argama. As a result, the Irish followed the same basic design set up by the Argama, featuring a total length of 323 meters and a twin catapult bow silhouette, a design made to put an emphasis on mobile suit operation capabilities. This overall ship's design thus enabled the Irish to adopt a large high-capacity hangar, enabling the ship to carry around 12 mobile suits on an average basis and 15 at max capacity, higher than the 10 mobile suits usually transported by the Argama. All these mobile suits could then be launched through a total of 4 different catapults, 2 located on the launching ramps over the twin bows, and finally 2 others combined on the top and bottom of a rear landing pad connected to a rear sub-hangar. Now, the Irish class wasn't just a ship created to serve uniquely as the mass-produced daughter vessel of the Argama class, with the Irish being also designed to also overcome some of the Argama's main flaws, mainly its lack of firepower and vulnerability in ship-to-ship combat, a main design flaw given its need to compete with the Titan's own Alexandria-class heavy cruisers. As a result, the Irish was also a ship that was largely drawn from another battleship design from the Big Gun Doctrine days, namely the Magellan-class battleship, once commander vessels of the Federation forces. From the Magellan, the Irish mainly incorporated design concepts such as overwhelming firepower and excellent damage control capabilities, while also putting a new emphasis on cruising speed, reason why the Irish is actually labeled as a battleship instead of an assault carrier, and why it also would sometimes be referred as a Magellan type. This overwhelming firepower was achieved through a complete revamping of the Argama's main and secondary offensive armaments, with the Irish adopting a new set of beam turrets to better perform in anti-ship combat. For primary fire, the Irish adopted a pair of large-caliber twin-barrels mega-particle cannons, a feature largely inspired by the Magellan's main turrets but absent in the Argama's design, with one of these turrets on the upper hull while the other was placed on the opposite side of the bottom hull. These 2 turrets were supported by a total of 5 single-barrel mega-particle cannons for secondary fire, 4 being located on the upper and bottom hull of the middle sides of the ship, while 1 protected the rear hangar and connected launching ramps. These secondary cannons were each equipped with a precision sensor for higher accuracy, and were also of the same exact type as the Argama class 4 main cannons, thus providing the Irish with much needed firepower in contrast to its first parent ship. In addition to this added higher firepower, the Magellan's inspired design also featured improved and downsized thermonuclear reactors for all these beam cannons, which, alongside more numerous propulsion systems, ensure the Irish would have more cruising speed and range than the regular Argama. As I said before, the Irish also took into account the excellent damage control capabilities of the Magellan class, but also its flaws, adopting a hybrid design for its rear engine structure, a mixture between the linear design featured in the Magellan and the proven Xeon-inspired block structure layout. What I'm trying to say is that instead of fully adopting the block design using the Musai, Alexandria, and later Rakailume and Klopp, which enabled the ship to seal off a damaged engine and continue cruising afterwards, the Irish made use of a simplified blocking structure with 4 compartments for a total of 12 rear thrusters, fully capable of sealing one of these damaged blocks and resume operations, while being streamlined similarly to the Magellan compacted rear structure. Why exactly this design was chosen isn't clear, but it could be that it was either a cheaper alternative, with more blocks being needed to achieve the same results, or that this streamlined design simply enabled the ship to reach better cruising speeds while also keeping the advantages of the block system. With all these assets, the Irish ended up being an excellent naval design, easily surpassing the Argama in terms of mobile suit supporting capacity, firepower, and of course manufacturing cost. Now, this did not mean that the Irish was a perfect design, far from it. First of all, the cost-cutting measures that surrounded the Irish conception, derived from the will to mass-produce the Argama at a cheaper cost, ended up greatly impacting the ship habitability, with the Irish lacking most of the fancy but very useful comfort features that made the Argama an excellent ship to be crewed on. The rotating habitation blocks, providing artificial gravity, retractable cannons and retractable bridge were all removed from the Irish design, but the class also lost the Argama's balut system, removing the possibility to use the Irish class to re-enter the atmosphere. Due to the removal of the retractable bridge, a dual-layer bridge was instead adopted to different functions between combat and observation bridges, a rather crude alternative to the sophisticated system of the Argama that made the Irish bridge even more of an easy target. Even worse, the Irish suffered from an even more drastic flaw, a total absence of anti-mobile suit defenses, be it any kind of anti-aero turrets or even missile launchers. This meant that the Irish was forced to rely on its own mobile suit escorts to protect itself from both enemy mobile suits attacks, a flaw that eventually proved fatal to the most infamous ship of the Irish line, the Radish, who was left helpless from a blitz attack from Yazan-Gabel Hambrabi. Now, this major flaw was initially shared with the Argama, but the assault carrier quickly remediated to the issue, being refitted to incorporate batteries of anti-air laser turrets, something the Irish never did, minus the variant we will later cover. Why exactly the Irish was designed with such a blatant design flaw, shared with the Musai, is not exactly sure, with 3 main theories coexisting in the lore. The first one is that through its relation to the Magellan, the Irish was designed with the data it collected from its experience during the 1-year war, which showcased how inaccurate anti-air defenses were against mobile suits and the necessity to instead prioritize a proper mobile suit escort to intercept enemy units. This theory, although interesting, is not to be taken too seriously, considering anti-air defenses remained a standard post-1-year war, with the main example being the Musai Kai, which main addition was anti-air defenses the Musai once lacked. The second theory, in line with this first idea, dive into the fact that the lessons taught by the 1-year war about inaccurate anti-air defenses brought the era of slower firing laser anti-air defenses, which lasted until the early UC-90s, where dissuasive anti-air power through rapid-firing turrets became popular again. This era of slower firing laser turrets, which were for example later added to the Argama, had the problem of being rather expensive and were supposedly not added to the Irish design in order to cut down costs. The last theory, which is the more plausible, is that the Irish was designed with the idea that the 5 single-barrel secondary turrets, while having precision sensors and great rotation axis, would fill the role of anti-air defenses, something confirmed by the Radish response to the Hambrabi, as it fired these secondary turrets against it. The truth is likely in the middle of these 3 theories, with the era of costly laser turrets pushing Anaheim engineers to capitalize on the secondary beam turrets and internal mobile suit storage for more escorts, and hoping it would provide the Irish with sufficient defenses. Now, despite this rather important flaw, the Irish remained an excellent design, with an initial batch of a dozen units serving the AUK faithfully during the Grips War and later First Neosian War, 12 of whom being named. The first of these is the nameship of the class, the Irish, shown in Mobile Suit Zeta Gundam and painted in the signature AUG fleet colors, also shared by their Jim 2 and Salame Sky. The second one is the Radish, painted in, well, Radish colors, which supported the original Agama as a joint ally vessel until its destruction at the Battle for the Colony Laser. The third and fourth unit, the Saint-Gallen and Zwickau, would both appear in École du Ciel, both participating in the battle against the mobile armor Dagui, with the Zwickau having the honor of being the mothership of the Halloween squadron of former one-year-old veteran turned AUG ace, Jacques Bayard. The fifth unit, the Cookstown, was stationed at the lunar city of Epsilon City, only surviving the rampage of the two mass production Psycho Gundams thanks to the efforts of a full armor Yakushiki Kai. The sixth unit, the Stout, would not be so lucky and would be sunk by the mobile armor Geminus in the events of Gundam Evolve. As for the seventh unit, the Moustache, it would survive until the First Neo-Zeon War, serving temporarily as the AUG flagship for their Axis capture operation which failed miserably and resulted in the Moustache being sunk. The 8th unit, the Cavendish, would instead survive until UC-116, being taken over by its crew who refused to return to the Federation forces in the UC-90s and instead became members of the Egum, one of the radical factions born out of the AUG post-First Neo-Zeon War. The 9th unit is going to remain a secret for now, because this video is sadly fairly short, the Irish having only one variant, and this variant being the special 9th unit. I've also heard the names Ivanhoe, Cologne and Windermere, but I can't figure anything else aside those three names. Now, after the conclusion of the First Neo-Zeon War, the Irish would survive the dissolution of the AUG, with the Federation forces adopting the battleship as one of their new mainstay vessels for a couple of years, ironically alongside its longtime enemy, the Alexandria-class heavy cruiser. The Federation would then commission a second batch of Irishes, 5 of one being known. Among them, the Oasis and the Echalot would be repurposed as VIP transport ships, with the Echalot serving as the original mothership of the Unicorn Phoenix. Aside those two, the Saint-Yves, Arlec Burt and the Mitterrand would all survive until UC-120, where they would participate in the expedition against Marzion as part of the reformed 13 Autonomous Corps. While the Irish would be quickly superseded by the appearance of the Rakailum and Klopp in the early UC-90s, the ship line would actually have a nice ending for once, with the Irish data being reused to construct the Rakailum and Klopp in the first place, despite both classes being mainly developed from former Titan's ships. Even better, the Irish would continue serving afterward until UC-120 at least, as showcased by the trio Mitterrand, Saint-Yves and Arlec Burt. But that's enough lore for today. Let's dig the one and only variant of the Irish class. Time to move to the first and sadly only real variant of the Irish class, the 9th ship of the line introduced in advance of Zeta, Traitor to Destiny, the one and only Areion. Named after the mythical divine bred and infamously fast horse Areion or Areion of the Greek mythology, the Areion was a particular case in the sense that while it was not exactly the 9th ship of the class, it is known it was among the last of the AUG Irishes to be completed, and for particular reasons. In terms of key differences, the Areion first differs from its more common brethren, all most of the time painted in different green shades, through its primary paint scheme, with the Areion adopting white colors, which actually make little sense since the mythical Areion is, well, super well known for its black mane. Anyway, aside these different badly explained colors, the Areion also differed from other Irishes in terms of offensive and defensive firepower, with the Areion having all its armaments revised and modified to increase its overall performance. Firstly, the Agama-type secondary single-barrel long megaparticle cannons with the sensor underneath were all removed for a new type of turrets with a shorter barrel, with the main double-barrel megaparticle cannons suffering the same fate, being replaced with a different design. Although seemingly harmless, this change was actually fairly important, as those new turrets would become the new standard set up by the Magellans and Rakailum manufacturer Vic Wellington, being used in the future for the Club class, Rakailum class, and even Nail Agama refit. Secondly, and more importantly, the lack of anterior defenses of the Irish class was seriously reconsidered in the Areion's design, with the new Irish variant receiving a complement of 20 laser anti-air twin turrets, 12 defending the rear section and the engine blocks, 2 under the battle bridge, 4 near the hangar, and finally 2 under the ship. With these turrets, the Areion finally fixed the biggest flaw of the ship line by gaining adequate anti-mobile suit defenses, although the repartition of these turrets was not casual, as they were said to be centered around the bridge and power structure of the engine blocks, considered the most vital part of the ship, which is debatable. Aside these changed weapons, the Areion is also said by some sources to board an additional amphibious assault craft, but I would still take that information with a grain of salt. In all cases, the change in main cannons and turrets eventually led to long construction delays for the Areion, which wasn't completed until after the battle at Conpei Island during the final stages of the Grips War. Upon completion, the Areion was commandeered by the ex-captain of the Salami Sky-class Delphi, Christian Kirk, with most of the crew of the Delphi, aka the protagonist of Traitor to Destiny, switching over to the Areion. And that's all we have about the Areion. Before we end this video, I want to just share one last hopefully funny fun fact. In the book description, the Areion is just a plain white Irish, much like the Echalot, with the new changes being only added and detailed in the visual book complete file of Traitor to Destiny, because as per the writers, it would be more interesting to have a bit of variation. This being said, this video comes to an end. Marco and Codes out.
But who will survive?